President Buhari recently sought the approval of the Senate to obtain $4 billion and 710 million euros loans to address critical projects approved by the Federal Executive Council. This has again brought to the fore concerns over the country's rising debt profile. Nigeria's total public debt stock rose from 33.11 trillion naira as of March 31, 2021 to 35.47 trillion naira as of June 30th, 2021. This shows an increase of 7.13% increase within the 3-month period. As at May 2021, the debt service to revenue ratio was pegged at 98%. This surge in the nation's debt burden, with its attendant impact on debt servicing costs, is raising concerns on debt sustainability. CEO Finance with Muktar Mohammed joins me in the studio to talk to us about this and help us better understand the direction of government. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Now, you see, the government's leaning towards external borrowing is raising concerns, talking about spending our way out of the economic downturn and all of it. But then when you look at all of what is going on, does it seem like we are putting into consideration the concerns of debt servicing with our borrowings?
No, we are not. The government keep borrowing rightly, like they said, which, of course, when you look at most of this borrowing are ties to specific projects that will have a long impact on the people. But how much of this project can generate revenue to pay off those debt? That is a challenge. Currently, out of every 100 naira Nigeria earn, we use 98 naira to service debt, which is huge. We just have only 2 naira. So it's, but then when you look at what you're saying, you were talking about March 2021.
Right.
At March 2021, the exchange rate was back at 393. Immediately, CBN pegged the exchange rate at 412 now. I'll just profile our region. Now, the challenge is we keep on borrowing from the foreign country, from Euro, we borrow from American and others. Now, the challenge is because of the exchange rate, it's going to really affect us because exchange rate is not steady. It keeps rising, even government trying to devalue, tactical devaluation. You and I agree that if you look at the devaluation of the naira currently with the debt profile, you realize the 7% that you're saying is going to be more than that. So it's a huge challenge for government. And in as much as we like borrowing, like I was saying, debt itself is an instrument to grow a business or an economy.
Right.
But when your debt is higher than your revenue, that is where the challenge comes. Now, government have a way of putting it. Debt to GDP, fantastic.
Right, that is, I was going to go there.
Debt to GDP, fantastic. Now, what is GDP in itself? It's just talk about the gross domestic product, how we are able to affect. But when we talk of debt to revenue, that is where the challenge is. Immediately we have a crisis that has to do with oil price plunging down. We have a, because that seems to be our major source of income. So it's a huge challenge. How the government are going to navigate their way up through this. Unfortunately, when you borrow now, you don't have control over how you pay. It's based on who gives you. The lender tells you how you have to pay, the percentage that you have to pay. So we are not going to be there. Each subsequent generation or subsequent government will have to negotiate their way out of it, because this government have already agreed to it. And unfortunately, so the National Assembly seems to be a rubber stamp. So what they do, whatever the president brings in terms of borrowing, is acceptable by them, as long as it goes around the 6th geopolitical zone. I think that's a major challenge.
Now, this aspect of debt to GDP that the government always use as justifying the reasons for its borrowing and rising debt profile as being compliant, does the GDP ratio in any way contribute to government's ability to pay back its obligations?
Yes, GDP has to do with the output, how much we're able to get out of our economy, how much output in terms of our industries that are working, our people, how much they're able to generate.
Right.
You and I agree that we have a challenge there because of COVID-19. The pandemic also affected us. Cost of oil has gone down. Exchange rate is seriously an issue now, even for the small businesses,
right.
even the non-agricultural sector. So it's a big challenge. When you see the GDP grow, you tend to look at how much of the economy has been opened up in terms of productivity. Now, productivity itself is different from revenue, because sometimes what we gain in revenue, we also lose it in terms of exchange rate. What we gain in revenue, also sometimes we lose it because of what I'll call the inputs into it, because you're looking at infrastructure, you're looking at challenges of doing business, you're looking at costs of businesses also.
Right.
So all these affect. So GDP itself can be growing because you are pushing out a lot of products. Yeah, but in terms of commensurate result that we have to come with by in profit, then that will add up to your revenue. That is really challenging, because you don't pay debt with your GDP output, productivity sector,
right.
how much you're able to open up, you pay it based on your revenue. So that is the major challenge. Like I said, we make, I can make it shorter, is that for every 1 naira, even let's go for every 1 naira, we use 80 kobo to pay debt. So it's a huge challenge. You have 20 kobo. And then when you look at this 20 kobo, out of this 20 kobo, you need to look at recurrent expenditure. It takes a huge chunk of it. So that is why government will tell you that, look, we know we have a challenge with recurrent expenditure. We know that if we look at that, we will not be able to do any project. Let us borrow to build in some projects. Then, as our revenue improves, then we start paying. So that is why when you see the labor order clamor, the health sector, everybody clamoring that, look, we need to be paid such and such, government will not, because those are recurrent expenditure. Via the debt profile now, it will be very difficult for government to meet us.
But the question on the lips of some is, has our borrowing really delivered on infrastructure so far?
Well, thus far, you have to give it to them. I must commend them in terms of infrastructure development. They've not been any government that have done so much in terms of infrastructure like this government. Right. And you could see the results. You can that result. You look at the Lagos Ibadan Rail, you look at the Abuja Kaduna Rail, you look at the type of project they have tried to do in terms of road network, Lagos Ibadan, Onitsha Second, Niger Bridge, and all of this. These are all projects that are ongoing, and these projects that are funds that are.
So we'll be able to bridge the infrastructural deficit gap.
We've been able to bridge it, but we have a major challenge, because what we're seeing now is infrastructural deficit in terms of transportation. The major infrastructure deficit gap that we need to build up to attract foreign direct investors is power. And there also the government is doing partnership, and which you will need to commend them. Sometimes when you look at the borrowing, you look at it like some of this borrowing are all government-owned contribution to the public-private partnership, especially those that we have with the Chinese government. Now,
there's another question of where do we begin to draw the line? Yes, we have this deficit that we need to bridge the gap. Our productivity is not as much. The revenue we are generating, there are issues with it. But then again, the economy has to run.
Yes. We need to look. We need to begin to bridge the gap, because one government cannot successfully finish every project. Do what you can so that subsequently government can also do what they can. You see, this government, because of the lot of promises they made to Nigerians,
so they're under pressure.
They are under so much pressure. So when the pressure comes, the next thing you do is tend to borrow. It's just like a man, if you in your house, you live above your means and you want to keep living within those means to let the people know that, look, things, I can do what I said I will do, then you don't have no option than to borrow. So I think it's the pressure that's on the government to deliver on their promises, especially when it comes to infrastructure, especially when it comes to a lot of promises they've given Nigeria. Unfortunately, it's not going to yield the desired result even after they are gone, because some of these projects are also the borrowing, especially the ones that we have with the Chinese government, the one we have with the public, are going to run for the next 25 years. So for the next 25 years, we'll have subsequent governments, subsequent generation paying for debt that they know nothing about.
Now, there are those who believe that some of these projects, government could just engage the private sector on taking some of those projects. We see what you talked about with power. There's a partnership. The roads, the rail, the government could perhaps have partnership to addressing that as well. That's instead of taking up all of this.
I said we have to commend the Minister for Works and Housing also.
Right.
I think he has done well in that. You can see that MTN also is taking infrastructure road network in the southeast. We've seen Dangote also do that from Apapa all the way to Ojota and others. So we must commend that we've seen those public-private partnerships. They are working in the work sector, but there are other sectors that could be very difficult because you're talking about bringing in some of these infrastructures. I mean, some of these machineries that you need for this product because of the exchange rate. I keep saying it's a major challenge. Dangote is able to do all this because, number one, if you see the kind of road they are doing now, they are doing it with their own product that they are able to get here. Okay. So it's easier. But when it comes to the rail line, you need to partner with foreign partners. And that is why the government have no option than to partner with the Chinese, which seems to be cheaper for them. Right. When it comes to power, we have all the agreements. Unfortunately, those agreements have not started because of one or two technical challenges that has to do with legal issues. So they are really trying to see the public sector partnership.
Now, I want you to quickly touch on the implication of our continuous borrowing, because that a lot of persons would want to understand, especially on our democracy, on the generations that will come afterwards and the government, its implications generally.
Implication is going to be huge, especially we're looking at if our revenue profile, especially from the non-oil sector, does not improve, if we still depend on oil, if we don't build other streams of income. And mark you, these are foreign debts. We're not talking about domestic debt. Domestic debt is easier to pay because you could do a lot of things, like you give them coupon for the next 5 years. You try, and that also help to galvanize the economy. That means they will provide jobs. Once those money are paid, people will be paid salary. A lot of jobs will also be created. But when it comes to domestic borrowing, especially with Nigeria, it's a huge challenge, because if you look at it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, what was the exchange rate comparable to now, even in the government official exchange rate? So it's going to be very challenging for any government, any administration that will come to power to be able to pay off this debt, especially when you have a debt.
So what options do they have quickly?
Unfortunately, as it stands, because of the COVID-19 pandemic and other things, if they still have to build infrastructure, they will want to still borrow. Like I said, the only option they have is to say, look, we have borrowed to this limit, we'll depend on this, we won't go further than this in terms of infrastructural development. That is where we stand for now. We won't borrow again for subsequent generation. That's the only way.
All right. CEO Finance with Muktar Mohammed, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.